Hi, everybody. All right, this video was not really planned. It's kind of an impromptu episode here. If you're watching on YouTube, you're getting to see the video of me still in my pajamas, no makeup. Not that I care. I'm not apologizing for that. I just think it's funny. Like, I'm so not quote unquote professional when it comes to my appearance on my channel, but whatever. Like I've said 1,000 times, I like to keep it real, as real as I can, really, on social media and how I just present myself, because some days you don't want to put on makeup, some days you don't want to brush your hair, and some days you spend all day in your pajamas, and that's okay. If you're listening to this on the podcast, hi, hello. If you're watching this on YouTube, you should head over to the podcast, the Goddess Life podcast. It's on iTunes and most podcasting apps, because a lot of the time I do put the same content on my podcast that is also on the YouTube channel, but then there's also sometimes I just put episodes on the podcast that are not here on YouTube, and vice versa. If you're listening to this on the podcast, head on over to my YouTube channel and check it out, because I put content on the YouTube channel that you don't always find on the podcast. All right, anyway, I wanted to jump on and do this because all day today this has been something I feel I need to discuss. And it is about living in the shadows. So there's a couple, I guess, disclaimers or something I want to say before we really get into this. And that is that when I talk about the darkness or the shadows, I'm not talking about like evil things. I'm not talking about the things that go bump in the night. I'm talking about just shadow work, our subconscious, dealing with emotions and thoughts and feelings that maybe aren't the most pleasant, or ones that we have pushed down and repressed for years for different reasons. I'm talking about the subconscious, the shadow, the healthy aspect of the shadow. And I just lost my train of thought. So I'm not talking, when I'm referring to the shadows, like I'm not referring to anything evil or dark, like dark in the bad sense. And I'm also not saying that it's not safe to be in the shadows. Because if you followed me at all, like I am a big believer in the importance of embracing the shadow and delving into our shadow sides and dealing with the not so fun emotions, dealing with, I guess, what some people would refer to as lower vibrational energies. And again, I'm not talking about dealing with like demons and other than the demons we carry with ourselves. But you know what I mean? I'm not talking about working with the devil and working with demons and, like evil low vibrational energies or whatever. But depression, that's a low vibration. Things that are low vibration don't necessarily have to be evil. I think a lot of the time people kind of correlate low vibration with like evil entities. And while that can cross over, lower energies and lower vibration doesn't automatically equal evil. Dealing with depression is a lower vibrational energy. Dealing with, feelings and emotions and memories that were traumatic to us, those are lower vibrational frequencies. And I think it's important to deal with that, just like it's important to deal with the higher frequencies. And so I'm not saying to not deal with your shadows or to ignore them or to, to only live in love and light, because that's not freaking realistic. And I despise when people say, oh, you just need to, get into that high vibe, only be high vibe, high vibe, high vibe. Like, no, that's not realistic. We need balance in all areas of our lives, mind, body, spirit. We need to find that balance. So just like it can be dangerous to only live, I'm thinking of it as kind of like, here's this imaginary horizontal line. Just like it's dangerous to live way above that horizontal line in the high vibey area, it can be dangerous. It's not safe. And that can be a whole other topic for another episode. But it's not healthy and it's not safe to constantly be in that high vibe state. The same can be said for constantly being in a low vibe state. And that's more what we're going to be talking about today, is kind of when does it become, I don't want to say unsafe, because that sounds like, that sounds like clickbaity or something, like when living in the shadows becomes unsafe. But, just like we don't want to live high vibe all the time, we don't want to live low vibe all the time. We don't want to always be in the shadows. And I love the shadows. I'm very there. Some of us really like to be in the shadows. We're comfortable there. It's not really something that's super scary. But therein lies kind of maybe a little bit of an issue, is we can get so comfortable in the shadows that I don't want to say we get lost in the shadows, although sometimes we can get lost in the shadows. But we get so comfortable in the shadows and kind of that lower energy state that it can kind of start to cause some issues, just as if we were getting stuck in the higher energy state. So again, I just want to reiterate, I'm not saying that light or shadow, one is better than the other. They're on a spectrum. They both have their good and bad qualities. And it's important that we try to find that happy medium. Or if we venture to the lower energies, to be able to pull ourselves back to that medium. Just like if we venture too high in those energies, we can bring ourselves back to that happy medium. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. I realized over the last handful of months that I've really been in my shadows. I've really been, I've gotten comfortable in the lower energy state. And again, I'm not saying an evil state, but I've noticed, that's just what I've noticed. I've been gravitating to more of the shadowy things. I've been, my altar even was primarily, I noticed it today, which I'm going to get into kind of where this all came up today. But I looked at my altar and it was primarily dedicated to, the dark goddess, particularly to Hecate, which, and again, I'm not saying that anything is wrong with Hecate, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with having an altar space and a sacred space for, the dark goddess or the dark god or, whatever. But I noticed, and then I'm looking around, and I love Halloween. I love Halloween. I always joke that Halloween is year round for me. I love skulls. I love bats. I love all the things that go bump in the night and, coffins and skeletons and things. But these could be considered lower vibration, and I'm sure there's some people that are going to say that's bullshit. And, a skull doesn't necessarily mean low vibration, or, working with the dark goddess doesn't necessarily mean low vibration, and it's and everything, images and iconography and stuff, it only has as much power as we give it. I can totally understand that aspect, but then there also are elements too, when we see symbols, our brain, our subconscious works with symbols. I mean, that's why we have so many archetypes within our dreams and symbolism within our dreams, and why tarot cards are so powerful for people, because symbols and imagery speaks to us kind of on a deeper level. And so when we are surrounded by images that we may correlate with lower energy, and again, not lower energy in a bad way, but just kind of the more shadowy, darker elements, it's just constant reminders to us to be in that shadowy state. So I know for me, for instance, I kind of looked around and I'm like, man, I have a lot of skulls going on. I have a lot of imagery for the dark goddess going on around my home, and especially in my sacred space. And again, that's not a bad thing, but I started to realize, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm really in these shadows right now. Like, I've been completely neglecting the higher frequency energies, the lighter energies. And I used it correctly, and therein lies the problem, is I was focusing so heavily on the shadows. It's not that I was focusing on the shadows that is the problem, and it's not that I was focusing on the dark goddess that is a problem. That's not a problem. It's that I had started to let the shadows consume my life. And I realized I really haven't been doing much work with the lighter energies. I mean, even the crystals I've been working with a lot of the more grounding, I guess, Basically, I kind of think of crystals like black tourmaline would be like on the shadow side, and like selenite would be on the lighter side of the spectrum. I've been working with a lot of black tourmaline. I've been working with a lot of, dark smoky quartz, obsidian, dark garnet. So a lot of the like darker, more shadowy crystals even. And I haven't really been gravitated towards the lighter crystals. And so just little things like that, I noticed that I was just basically letting the shadows start to consume me. And here's where the issue comes in. Just like when we have issues with the light, which, like I said, that can be a whole other episode, which we'll talk about because it has its own set of different issues when we let the light consume us. But when you start to let the shadows consume you, that's where you can start to find the issues. That's where like the depression can start to really kick in. The isolation can start to kick in. The stress and anxiety and, kind of maybe more anger. You might find yourself being a little more short with people around you, even those in your home. If you have these, if you're consuming your home with darker images and stuff, you may even find that the people in your home are starting to feel a little more on edge. And that's why it's important to have that balance. And again, this is the thing with spiritual stuff and magical stuff and everything, is everybody has their opinions. And just because I'm saying these things doesn't mean that what you think or feel or believe is wrong. Okay, so don't come at me. Because I'm sure there's plenty of people that are like, oh, well, I'm surrounded by dark imagery all day long and I'm the happiest person around. And, that's great. That's great for you. I just know, at least for me, when I'm really surrounding myself and really delving into that shadow and neglecting the higher energies, it doesn't feel very good. So what did I do today to help myself get out of this? Because I need to get out of this, and I really need to incorporate more of the light aspects. And this can be even if you are finding yourself more on the light aspect of things, like stuck in the high vibe. But primarily, if you're finding yourself stuck in the shadows, clean your space, vacuum, rearrange some stuff, rearrange some furniture, get rid of things that aren't, serving you anymore, things that are just, you're just holding on to for no reason. So like, that's what I did today, especially in my sacred space. I did it in my sacred space, which is like my little office space here. And then in the living room where we have most of our family interaction and stuff. I dusted the hell out of my living room and my sacred space. I vacuumed. I got rid of some stuff within my living room, and then within my sacred space as well. I rearranged a couple things. I put some stuff into boxes to keep for later. Specifically, I did remove a lot of the more shadow elements. So I removed some. I had some tombstones. And again, not that tombstones are negative. And I'm not saying that shadow stuff is negative, okay? But I removed things that were feeling low vibrational to me at this time. So I put away some skulls. I put my altar space, like I mentioned, my altar was primarily dedicated to the dark goddess. So I kind of made her little space smaller and put her, I have a shelf above my altar as well where I put some space for the goddesses. I basically have space on my altar at all times for Mother Mary, Athena, and Hecate. So I diminished Hecate's space and I put her up on the shelf with Athena, which that feels nice too because they're both from the Greek pantheon. And then I made the focus point of my altar to Mother Mary, and I included some beautiful high vibrational crystals, my Mother Mary statue. I cleaned off the space of my altar as well. It's a lot less cluttered now. I reorganized the space behind me a little bit. But basically, those are some things that you can do if you're finding yourself kind of lost in the shadows. Rearrange, pack some stuff up. Surround yourself with more high vibrational crystals and imagery that you like. I also went around and took little pieces of selenite and put them in all four corners of the rooms of our house. And so these are just little things that you can do to kind of just increase the light, high vibrational energy in your life. And honestly, I instantly felt a difference. Like this space right now, instantly, it feels lighter. And it feels good. And not that it felt bad when I had, more of the shadow elements within my space. Because there's a time and place for everything. And at the time when I rearranged my altar and had it primarily focusing on the dark goddess and my shadow stuff, it felt good. It felt good because I needed to be in that space at that time. But the thing with the shadows and the light too, we can get comfortable in that space, and we can kind of outstay our welcome. And I was kind of getting to that point where it's like, okay, I've stayed in these shadows for too long. Like it's time for me to leave the shadows now. But we can get comfortable and get kind of stuck in these different little frequencies. And I was starting to, I had done my shadow work and it had served its purpose. And it's almost like if you stay there too long past serving its purpose, that's when it can start to kind of weigh you down. And I think that's what it was doing for me. It had served its purpose. And like I said, I still have a space for Hecate. I still have a space for the dark goddess because it is important to have that balance. I don't want my space to be 100% high vibe only and only focusing on the high vibe crystals and angels and goddesses. It's important to have the more shadowy elements as well. So I'm definitely not ignoring and neglecting my shadow side. I just feel like it's time now to sway a little bit more back over to the light side. And it's okay for us to do that. If you're in this space as well, it's okay. Just like when we're in the high vibey light phase, it's okay to then swing over more into the shadow phase a little bit. And if you're in the shadow phase, it's okay to swing back over to the light phase. As humans and just as beings of energy, it's unrealistic and impossible for us to just stay in one state of being. We're constantly ebbing and flowing. We're constantly like a pendulum swinging from one extreme to the other. Maybe not one extreme. We don't want to be on extreme ends of the spectrum, but you know what I mean. Sometimes we're a little more in the light phase. Sometimes we're a little more in the shadow phase. The important thing is to realize when maybe you're outstaying your welcome in one of those phases, or to notice when you're kind of getting stuck in one of those phases and to pull yourself out. That's why I want to say, like, I wasn't lost in the shadows, because when we're lost, we may not even be aware that we need to leave that state of mind or state of being and enter into another one. And when we're lost too, we may be aware that it's time to switch to a different energy frequency, but it's difficult to do that. And so that I do want to say that too, if you are finding yourself on either end of the spectrum, in way too much of the light or in way too much of the shadows, and you're having a difficult time kind of finding that happy medium again, seek help. Look out for help. If you're trying to do all the things, you're trying to do the journaling and you're meditating and you're going into nature and you're using oils and crystals and, whatever else you do to help bring you into your basically energetic homeostasis, if you will. And you're trying to do the things to find that happy balance in your life, and you're having a difficult time doing it, as always, reach out for help. Reach out to a counselor. That's actually something I'm going to be doing as well. I've worked on my exterior space and I'm going to go back to counseling for a little while to work on my internal space. I'm going to definitely up my time in nature. I'm going to incorporate more high vibey crystals into my energetic space. But yeah, I feel like now I'm just kind of rambling. So I just wanted to touch on that. Let me know your thoughts. And like I said, again, everybody has their own opinions. I know some people like to think that certain elements of like spirituality and energy and magic and stuff is like set in stone. And this may piss some people off that I think this and say this, but really, like, nothing is set in stone. Like, even when we're receiving guidance from like spirit guides or our higher selves, it's still our human brain that is interpreting it, and our own personal experiences help interpret things that, messages that we receive. So what works for you and your beliefs may not necessarily work for somebody else in their beliefs. So again, I'm not saying what you think is wrong, and that I'm, the end all be all and what I'm saying is correct. I'm just sharing what my thoughts and experiences are, and they may be different than yours, and that is okay. But yeah, so I'm going to go sit with a pretty little high vibing crystal. Celestite is really calling me, and probably going to go sit outside because it's chilly as hell right now, but the sun is actually shining here in Ohio. So, all right, I'll talk to all of you guys later. Bye.